Hello and welcome to more live coverage of the 2017 Audi R8 LMS Cup coming to you from Suzuka, Japan. Alongside me, as always, Sean Henshwood. Sean, as the Cup made its debut for yesterday's race, what was the highlight for you?
Well, I think the highlight, given it was a level playing field, we'd never been here before, was Alessio Picariello continuing on with the performance that he had in Malaysia. That was very, very impressive, and he just drove away from the field.
Well, let's look ahead to the grid for today's race, which is coming up in just about 15 minutes' time. Frankie Chung, sixth from the start yesterday and finished sixth, but he's pole position for today's race. So the big question is, can he hold that? Can he get that elusive win?
Well, one of the things the drivers were talking about yesterday is, despite the fact it's 5.8 kilometres long, there's not too many overtaking moves available. There's Frankie. He was quickest in both 60-minute practice sessions on Friday, and he really has continued that pace on. Just missed out by a fraction in first qualifying. Second qualifying, took the pole position. Mitch Gilbert, second on both those occasions. Couldn't believe he was beaten, but just 2/100ths of a second. He said that was shattering, but certainly by being at the front, it's important to take that and move forward.
And then, of course, Alessio Picariello, here he is. He starts from third on the grid after that win yesterday. And the big question, of course, because of the results from yesterday, 50 kilograms additional in Alessio's car, 35 kilograms in Mitch's car. So not only is Frankie in pole position, but the next two in the field have that pretty heavy weight. How's that going to affect it off this standing start today?
Well, talking to Alessio Picariello yesterday, he said that in the second race in Malaysia, that extra 50 kilos was very challenging for him to get off the line. So that could happen again today.
Well, before we get to the race today, let's throw it down to Sophie, who's with Martin Kuhl.
Martin, welcome to the show. And we know that yesterday, round 3 is definitely a fantastic race. So what is your expectation for this morning?
Well, yeah, we're going into round 4. Cheng Chung-Fu is on pole. He was already the best in practice. He won the second qualifying. He has no success ballast in his car today. So depending on the start, everything is in for him, definitely. Also interesting to see Mitch Gilbert from second position. And of course, Alessio Picariello, he starts third. But he has the 50-kilo success ballast from his win yesterday. But he has proven maybe to be one of the drivers that are comparably less affected by weight. So I guess he will also still be in the mix.
Thank you so much. Let's just see all the drivers, how their performance in round 4. Now let's cross over back to our panel.
Thanks, Sophie. Well, looking further down the grid for today's race, Martin Rump finished 9th yesterday after the issue that he had with a bit of contact from KOU. That kind of knocked his car out of whack. He starts in 4th position, so he'll be looking to bounce back today.
Of course, 4-time winner last year, so he is one of those drivers like Alessio who could really run at the front of this field. And he said to me yesterday he was very disappointed in the contact, not so much how the incident happened, but the fact he said, I felt like I could move to the front. I could have been one of the fastest drivers in the field. Didn't get that opportunity today. New day, starts on the second row. I'd keep a close eye on the champion racing team car.
Well, let's take a look at the highlights from the full race from yesterday. And Alessio, of course, was the man to watch. Got a good start and really held it. It was, in the end, a pretty comfortable victory for the Belgian.
It was. We saw him do this at Sepang for the first event of the year. He just drove away from the field. In that situation, there was a safety car which closed the field up. He had to do it again. This time round, he said there was no such drama. He won by just over 7 seconds. The main attack was this one coming to turn 1. It was Mitch Gilbert, his teammate, alongside him. And Gilbert said that was the only chance I had. He said I couldn't see him as I turned into turn 1. And just at the very last instant, I noticed his car was there. He said it could have been a big accident because of the visibility thing. So too, Rick Uni was lucky to carry on. Of course, won the AM division last time out in Malaysia, but he was able to go through the gravel and rejoin. He was the big incident though, and this cost KOU, and he went down the chicane and came up the inside of David Chen, but of course then cleaned up the tail end of Martin Rump, and you see the smoke on the right rear of Rump's car there.
And KOU getting a 30-second penalty after the race. It was a drive-through penalty, but it was awarded afterwards, so added onto the timesheet, so that hindered him. But really, Alessio, you can see the gap already. It was sort of building half a second or a second per lap. And whereas we saw in the first race of the season in Malaysia, a safety car eradicated that lead, he didn't have the bad luck here, and it was basically from start to finish.
Somebody who did have the bad luck, though, is the reigning champion. This was a very unusual move. 130R, he said, I've had a few big spins over the years in Formula cars, but he said this was just unusual. I don't know why the rear broke loose, and he said I got a 720 spin and managed to carry on, but he said that's not what I need for this championship. We just didn't have the pace to match Alessio Picariello. He gets a chance again to do it all over again today, but there was no denying the man who would take victory.
That's right, Alessio Picariello extending his lead at the top of the driver's standings. That spin knocked Alex Young, previously his nearest contender, down to 7th position, still in the points, but not nearly as many as he would have hoped to get. And then, of course, Mitch Gilbert was second, with Stefano Rakelmi in third, scoring points for the first time because he was listed as a guest driver in Malaysia.
Yeah, he did a good job and was very happy to be on the podium. And there they are, the three young drivers. We're talking about the changing of the guard with these new young drivers coming through, and there's three of them on the podium. Of course, Anthony Liu won the AM Plus division, David Chen and Jeffrey Lee alongside him, and then of course in the AM division that victory went to Birambakti Sung Jingzhu standing alongside him. So they had a good result too, and valuable championship points.
Well, I'll just ask you for a moment about Anthony Liu. He starts from 6th on the grid. He's in the AM Plus class. There's three classes, of course, the professionals, the AM Plus, and then the amateur. Is pretty high up the grid for him.
He will be fantastic, but certainly there is another driver that we're going to keep a very, very close eye on, and Sophie Lee is talking to him. She is down on the grid with Frankie Cheng, the pole sitter for today's race.
Frankie, starting from pole position, so what do you need to do off the start to ensure you're leading into turn 1?
I need to have a good start and a good clean lap. And I'm very happy that to secure the pole positions. It has been a long time since last time I was on pole position. And also having Mitch and Alessio behind me, we are in one team. So I'm sure that they are also not really do something crazy, but let's see. And it's a 12 laps race, so let's see what we can do.
Good luck for you, Frankie, and back to the panel.
Thanks, Sophie. Well, Frankie seems pretty calm there, doesn't he? I mean, we've seen him perform very well in qualifying and not always capitalise on that in the race. But all things being equal, pole position, given the weight in the other two cars, he should be able to get to turn 1 in the clear and then hopefully take it from there.
Realistically for him, all he has to do is get off the line. He doesn't have that weight that the two drivers immediately, or one behind and one alongside him, have, but he needs a good result too. I mean, we saw him lose the championship to Alex Young by a solitary point in 2015, but last year he didn't make the podium. It was just a very lacklustre year for the Chinese driver, so he's hoping to really get back into this championship, and this is the perfect opportunity. Certainly starting from pole, we spoke about this circuit being difficult to overtake on, so it's going to be a good opportunity for Frankie to actually make something out of today.
Well, let's keep taking a look down the grid. Anthony Liu, we said, starts on the 3rd row alongside Alex Young. Stefano Rakelmi in 7th. He was a 3rd place finisher yesterday. Then we've got Sean Thong, who starts from 8th. Marchi Lee, again, starts from down the grid, but he had a good race yesterday, worked up from 8th to 5th. He starts from 9th today. How far can he go? Well,
that just depends on overtaking opportunities again. Two real overtaking opportunities on this circuit. One of them is at the chicane. We saw that contact with KOU. Almost inevitable was the words that Alex Young used yesterday when talking about trying to make a passing move here. The other one is at the hairpin. So those two opportunities, if you can't make it fit there, then it's going to be a very processional race. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But as you say, those two Phoenix Racing Asia drivers did move forward in the field yesterday. 4th and 5th finish from the 5th row.
Well, let's throw it down now to Sophie, who is with the 4th place starter, Martin Rump.
Martin Rump, I know this is your first time here in Suzuka Circuit, so what is your expectation for your performance today, especially with 3 very competitive drivers in front of you?
Well, first of all, I have to say that there have been so many unknowns and like crazy stuff happening throughout this weekend because, you know, as some of you may know, my car wasn't ready for the free practices, so the whole team and Audi worked so closely together to get the car ready. and I was actually driving in qualifying, and I was doing as much as I could to catch up with the others, having missed most of the practice. So right now, also I'm just hoping that the car is quick and that I can drive as quick as I need to charge for the win, but for sure I need to see how the race develops in terms of the other cars being very quick in the front as well.
Thank you so much and good luck, Martin. And back to your guys.
Well, Sean, you seem to, another youngster with a bundle of confidence, as they all do these days.
He is right. He is one of the fastest. He was frustrated again by that contact in race one because he felt he could make the podium. And here he is again. He's starting from the second row. He doesn't have a weight penalty either. So he has a good opportunity, certainly off the start, to fire into turn one, use that push to pass to actually make up some position. So I would keep a close eye on the number 18 car.
Now, this is round 4. It's the second race of the weekend. The main difference, of course, that yesterday it was a rolling start. It's a standing start today. Historically, Sean, in the Cup, we've seen sometimes the drivers on that second race of the weekend, they want to leave everything out on the track, maybe go for a few more moves. Can we expect a more action-packed race today?
I think so. I think yesterday showed what the circuit was going to deliver. So it's going to be an interesting unfolding, this second 12-lap race.
And who's the dark horse for you today? If the race getting underway in just about 4 minutes from now, who is the one to watch? Of course, from Frankie at the front, but behind from the rest of the pack.
Well, I certainly think that Alessio is going to play it very smart, as he did last year. He lost the championship by just 1 point, only won one race. Now he's doubled that tally, and we're 3 races into the season. I would keep a close eye on Martin Rupp. He needs a big haul of points, and he'll push through. So it'll be he's the one for me that I'd be looking at very closely.
Well, a quick look at this very picturesque circuit with the Ferris wheel in the background, 5.8 kilometres, and we saw some action yesterday with Alex spinning out at one of the areas. So just highlight for us some of the key areas of this Suzuka circuit.
Well, here it is. One of the big things is this is a figure-8 layout because it crosses back over itself. This is very rare in world motorsport. In fact, this is, a lot of the drivers are calling it an old-school circuit, and it certainly is. This 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 complex, the S's, is very, very testing. There's the hairpin down at turn 10, up to Spooner Curve, and then the long back straight, back over itself, carry a lot of speed down to the chicane. Very famous part of the circuit, of course. You go back to the history of Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost for a Formula 1 World Championship. That chicane played into it there, and of course we saw it yesterday with KOU. So that is one of the overtaking opportunities. So very testing circuit, very demanding, but also very interesting and fun for the drivers.
That's right. The Cup has certainly driven on some of the very top circuits all around Asia, including, of course, the street race in Macau. Alex Young yesterday said this was the best circuit on the Formula 1 calendar. But Sean, let's just run through the starting grid for
there
today's
is Frankie
race.
Cheng on pole position from Mitch Gilbert, then Alessio Picariello, the points leader, alongside Martin Rupp, the 2 young guys. Alex Young, Anthony Liu, the AM Plus driver, the Chinese driver, very well versed with GT3 cars. Stefan Rakelmi, of course, on the podium yesterday. Sean Dong alongside on the 4th row. 5th row, then Marchi Lee and David Chen in the Tianxia racing car. KOU will start from position 11 alongside Rick Yoon, then Kane Young and Jeffrey Lee, who, of course, last time out won the AM Plus division.
Well, the grid's just clearing now, as you can see, just moments away from the start of this race. As always, there will be one more race where they just one more lap. Sorry, while they just warm up, and then we can get underway from the standing start.
It's going to be very, very interesting. They want to put plenty of heat into those tyres too, because grip down to turn 1 is going to be the big thing. So they've got a lot of work to do.
So here we are, Suzuka circuit in Japan, with red lights just going out. And just, this is not the start for those of you new to the Cup. This will just be the formation lap while they just get some heat into those tyres. And just running through the grid for you. Frankie Chung, he is on the right-hand side of your screen, just moving there, number 31. Mitch Gilbert, 86, and then number 18 there in 4th position, Martin Rump. He will start alongside Alessio Picariello on the second row of this grid. That's the green car, the Castrol racing car of Stefan Riquelme, third place finisher yesterday. He starts in 7th position in today's race, but he will be carrying an extra 20 kilos of successed ballast. That's Marchi Lee there, and the red flashing lights, the red number in the back rear window of the car shows you how many push to passes, which is the additional power boost that these cars get during the race. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on as the race progresses. You can expect almost all the drivers to be used at least one or more at the start to get a really good clean getaway, and then it's more of a tactical battle as to how many they keep for the later stages of the race or decide to use as the race progresses. Number 1, a 3-time and reigning champion Alex Young starts from 5th position today and was 7th yesterday. So not the performances that he's been looking for, certainly not we're used to after 3 back-to-back titles. Sean Thong's car just going through there, the youngster teammate of Alex, and a lot of final nerves just going through the drivers' minds as they come to the end of this formation lap, and then we'll get ready for the start.
Frankie Cheng's got it all in front of him. He'll be just trying to calm himself down, his nerves, and get everything ready to go. Of course, a very experienced campaigner in the Cup, has been one of the series regulars over many years. Of course, not as many races under his belt as the likes of Jeffrey Lee and Marchi Lee. They've been involved in all but 2 races of the 6 seasons so far. Well, the 5 completed seasons. We're into the 6th season of the Cup. But Frankie will be just getting his mind together. All he really needs to do is have a good, clean start. He should be able to hold that position into turn 1, and then from there it's up to his rivals to do what they can. He said his focus is to try and achieve exactly what Alessio Picariello did yesterday and drive away from the field as quickly as possible so he can get down to this part of the circuit, down to the chicane, so that there's an opportunity. He is far enough in front that nobody has a chance to dive up the inside. So they're going to do 2 laps to get heat into the tyres, get the cars sorted, all the systems ready to go, and then we will be around for this second standing start of the 2017 season. Sean Thong is another of the drivers, talking to Mark Dreyer earlier about some of those that you could consider were dark horses, drivers that may be able to work their way through, and there he is on screen in the Audi Tita racing car. That, of course, is 21-year-old Hong Kong driver Sean Thong. His mentor and Phoenix Racing Asia teammate immediately behind him, that is, of course, Marchi Lee, very, very experienced campaigner, and of course the winner of the very first Audi R8 LMS Cup back in 2012, the Audi Hong Kong driver. There is Martin Rump in the Champion Racing Team entry, prepared and run by KCMG. That car, unfortunately, is almost brand new, as it was the original car was damaged. The car he started the season with in Malaysia was damaged during a Blancpain GT Series Asia event in Thailand a couple of weeks ago. They had to race a new car here and have it ready. He was talking to Sophie on the grid about the fact that they didn't quite have the preparation time. They were still trying to get the car sorted, and that's what his point was. The 37 car was Anthony Liu. The 11 rather, the Castrol Racing Team entry of Stefan Riquelme. But it's down to Frankie Chung, and the Chinese driver really needs a good result. Certainly 2015 season, he was one of the stars, lost the championship in the final by just a solitary point to Alex Young. And since that time, Mark Dreyer, unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of success for Frankie Chung, but this could change today.
Well, it could. He's obviously in pole position. That is the position that everyone wants to be in. And he's shown pace throughout the weekend. Yesterday, he obviously started from 6th, so wasn't in position maybe to strike for the win or even get on the podium. But he is a veteran of the Cup, a lot of experience, and he knows what's what. So he just needs to get away and hope that there are no safety car incidents, that if he can pull a gap at the beginning, he can continue that.
Oh, certainly, and that's what will be going through his mind. We often talk about, certainly in big races, what's going through a driver's mind or a team's mind as you get towards the closing stages, but certainly it's the start, the nerves. And there's a famous saying, which I'll tone down a little bit, about motorsport. It's when the flag drops or the lights go out, then all the nonsense stops. You just forget the nerves, you forget everything else, and you're focused 100%. But up until that point, you've got all the thoughts running through your head. What if? Where do I need to be? Am I going to get the start right? Are we going to fudge it? Is there going to be a problem? All those things will be running through your head. You try and put them out. But of course, professional sports people these days have psychological advice on how to best deal with those sorts of things. But I think for all of that, right about now, that will be out of Frankie's mind. He's just set up, he's in the right position. You can see he's very slightly angled towards the first corner. He's not dead straight on. So that's a little bit of intimidation too, just to let the man on his inside, Mitch Gilbert, know that he's serious about this. So they're just about ready to go for a start for the second race, the historic second race at Suzuka Circuit for the Audi R8 LMS Cup. Fourth race of the 2017 season. Be cleared at the rear of the field. You'll see the green flag go. The revs will build. The drivers will be ready to go. And Frankie Cheng will be focused intently now on getting off the line. Here we go. Watch the lights. They'll all come on, and when they go out, it is fire time. And it is round 4 of the Audi R8 LMS Cup for 2017. Frankie's got a great start off the line, comes straight across, a bit of wheel spin too, closes the door immediately on Mitch Gilbert. Now Alessio Piccarello's going to try and come across and squeeze his teammate, and he's done it, moves into second position. That is a great move. Alex Young into position 4. He is going to come back into this, and Martin Rump's back to position 5.
Well, Gilbert was using the push to pass, but perhaps a little bit too late there into the corner, because Piccarello had already got past him into second place, and carnage there at the back.
Contact. Alex Young just went a little bit offline, and that forced a bottleneck into turn 3, and a little bit of contact further back. That looks like Anthony Liu was involved in that. That is the 37 car on screen. Little bit of damage to the left rear of that car. So frustration for him, because certainly from 6th on the grid, we expected the Chinese driver to play into this race as it goes on. But at the front of the field, Alessio Piccarello, with 50 kilograms of additional success ballast, is monstering the rear of Frankie Cheng. More smoke there for Anthony Liu. So the left rear has dramas as one of the other cars further back runs very wide as he heads towards the bridge down at turn 9. That is Mitch Gilbert on screen in position 3. He again failed to make the most of the start. Tried to protect as much as he could, but he was also mindful of his teammate, and he let Alessio Piccarello through to take position 2 and chase after Frankie Chung. Now Frankie wants to try and get as much distance between himself and the man in the 15 car, Alessio Piccarello, as they get down to the chicane, because he feels that's the one chance that certainly early in the race, whilst the cars are grouped up, that perhaps there will be an opportunity for Piccarello to take a dive, and certainly Piccarello will be on the push to pass. You can see it flashing there in the background, so he was doing what he can. And that, unfortunately, is more disaster for the reigning champion. That's going to make his season very hard. He said he felt yesterday, talking to us, that the car wasn't 100%, or wasn't really in the sweet spot. We certainly couldn't stick with Alessio, who's back on the push to pass to try and close onto the tail of Frankie. Frankie now is on the push to pass. But certainly Alex Young didn't need his debut run here at Suzuka to start like this.
Well, let's take another look at the start here, Sean. And well, really, it was perfect start for Frankie Chung, but as you can see, Alessio is sticking with him. But here we are off the line. He comes right across, as you said, and that allowed a little bit of a gap perhaps for Alessio around the outside.
Well, what I'm interested to see is what happens a little bit further back. Sean Tong just defending there from David Chen, and there's 4th position for Alex Young. He had Martin Rump behind him, but then he seemed to go a little bit right. Was he pushed, or did he fall, as they say? But he seemed to be very offline at that position. Here is Anthony Liu, who's coming back into pit lane after that contact as a result of that incident with Alex Young. So frustration for the Chinese driver. It's not the start he wanted.
So Martin Rump starts in 4th. He then immediately lost that position to Alex, but Alex is out. So Rump back up into 4th position. The main, obviously, other switch at the top of the field is Alessio Piccarello getting up past his teammate Mitch Gilbert into 2nd. And I think even though he's got the, this, of course, Anthony Liu doesn't look too good for him at the moment. even though Alessio has that 50 kgs, if there's any driver in this field who can stick with Frankie with that weight, it's Alessio.
And there is car one, unfortunately, limping back to pit lane. But yes, Alessio Picciarello is really going to do everything he can to try and get to the front of the field. We were talking about it earlier, though, on the panel, that he put a championship together last year by winning just one race against drivers that had won 3 and 4. So he knows, yes, I want to win a race. I'm a racer. I want to maximise my points every time, but it's not vital to my championship points lead. He's nearly got double the points of Alex Young, who was in second coming into this race. I don't need to jeopardise anything for maybe 4 or 5 extra points as they go past now Alex Young, who's still on his way, the long journey back to pit lane. But Alessio will push as hard as he needs to, protect obviously from Mitch Gilbert, but if he doesn't need to get past Frankie and take a risk, he may well sit in position 2. But the one I'm watching is the 18 car now that's ranging up onto the tail of Mitch Gilbert, and he's just set his fastest lap of this race with a 2:04.1, and that, of course, is Martin Rump.
Now, the other difference from yesterday's race is that they have double the number of push-to-passes. So they start from 10. You can see Gilbert there still has 9 remaining. How's that going to affect the strategy as this race develops?
Well, it depends on where they want to make a move and how they can make a move. Yesterday, talking about Sean Thong, he made a move past Alex Young, and he said, I managed to do it by getting onto the push to the pass just a fraction quicker coming onto the main straight. Down to turn 1, I was past him back in front and I could turn in and take the position. But he said the opportunities to use it are limited because the driver behind you knows when you've gone for that push to pass, which gives you an additional 50 horsepower, and you can range up alongside, but then you have the opportunity to react to that, push it yourself and pull away again. So it is really a strategic thing, but certainly the advantage, you would say, would be on the car behind, because they can watch more closely what the driver in front is doing than in the reverse situation. 9, as you say, there for Mitch Gilbert, but it looks like Martin Rump may still have his full quota of 10. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays, because that could be a position change and frustration, a very sad number 1 Audi R8 LMS Cup car of Phoenix Racing Asia driver and 3-time champion Alex Young returns to pit lane.
Well, some 2 fierce battles at the top of the field there with the first and second, and then the next pairing as well. And really, I think with Alessio continuing the pressure there, he is flashing at the front, just passing the right-hand side of the screen, keeping the pressure on Frankie at the front. That's not going to allow Frankie to relax at all. If he's not able to get away, perhaps he might be pressuring into a mistake.
Well, we saw that happen last time. Now, there's a freight train. Riquelme, Marchie Lee and Riquelme, a little bit of smoke from the right rear. Riquelme and David Chen, who's been a bit of a revelation on his debut here for the Tianxia racing team. That looks like it is Rick Yoon battling with Jeffrey Lee in the J-Fly Racing entry, and that is the 39 car of Kane Jung, who's making his debut in the Cup for the KCMG team. You can see Rick Yoon's gone for the push to pass, so now there's Jeffrey, and it's a drag race down to turn 1 between the AM Plus and the AM drivers. So it'll be interesting to see how this one goes. Rick's on it again, so he's used a little bit more. No, Jeffrey's taken the position away. There's not an opportunity there for Kane to go up the inside, so he just sit and wait. Oh, he is now a little bit wide by Rick, maybe a little bit of pressure, and you were talking about that very point. Alessio will push. He may not need to make a passing move, but if he can just poke his nose in enough to unsettle Frankie, and Frankie's taking lines that are more protective than they are race lines, then there could be an opportunity for something to happen. Now here's this battle between Riquelme and Marchie Lee. That is for position number 5. This is the next group back from Martin Rump, and there's David Chen there in the silver, green and red, well, silver, green, gold and red Tianxia racing car. Behind him, Sean Thong has moved up a position.
And that's Riquelme in 5th position. There's a pretty big gap between him and Martin Rump in 4th, now 6.5 seconds. And Rump has the fastest lap so far of the race, a 2:04.1. So he's been pushing hard on Mitch Gilbert to get into that final podium position. And I think we probably haven't seen the last of the position switches at the top of the field, Sean. What do you think?
Well, I think this one could see some position changes too. Certainly Riquelme's not getting away. David Chen, very impressive. The 3rd car in that line. He's got Sean Thong immediately behind him, and not a bad run either for KOU. Unfortunately penalised yesterday for that incident that happened down at the chicane. But I think you're right. I think this time round there is an opportunity for a few more position changes as this race unfolds. Of course, we've still got about 20 minutes. And there we go, Marchie Lee up the inside, and he's going to force him wide. A little bit of aggression. Riquelme has to be careful to rejoin. He's lost 3 positions there in the chicane. So there was the overtaking move. We saw a little bit of contact, but the opportunity to pass here without that contact is nigh on impossible when you talk to drivers like Alex Young. It has to be a decisive move. Oh, and Sean Dong being very aggressive there with David Chen for the position immediately behind.
Well, Riquelme actually lost to 4th position at the end of that stretch as well, so it was tough for him. He knows he can't really cut the corner, even though he's been forced wide there, because he could get penalised for doing so, and then lost that speed once he rejoins onto the track, and the rest of the field just, well, that pack at least, were able to just cruise past him.
Let's have a look at the replay. And there's Marchie very neatly down the inside. Riquelme came back across thinking he had the corner, but of course he didn't. We talk about visibility in these cars is very difficult. They're sitting very low and a long way back because that's the optimum position for the weight. So it's not set up for visibility, it's set up for weight distribution. So your visibility is actually quite poor. You also have a head and neck system device called a HANDS device, which protects you from an incident, and it limits your head movement left and right. So there are all these things to consider. So Riquelme may not have even known that Marchie was there until he turned in and that contact was made.
Well, a very opportunistic push to pass by KOU as they turned into that home straight. He saw that Riquelme was struggling to pick back up the pace after rejoining, hit the push to pass, and then went past him on the straight. But David Chen, now the AM Plus driver, up into 6th position. As you said, he's been a revelation and continuing to progress.
Has done a reasonable amount of GT racing, certainly in China last year, and in fact made his debut in the TCR Asia Series at Zhuhai, which is the home circuit for the Tianxia racing team in China, and was very, very impressive in the Audi RS3 LMS TCR. So we've seen a little bit of David this year, and I expect we're going to see an awful lot more. This is his debut, as it is for the team, in the Audi R8 LMS Cup, but what a fortuitous start. They're doing a very, very nice job, and great to see them come into this championship. But certainly, as you were pointing out, they're a little bit further back. Here's the battle between Kane Jiang and, of course, Jeffrey Lee, the reigning AM Cup champion in the Cup and a 62-time race starter over the 5+ seasons of the Audi R8 LMS Cup.
Great stats, Sean. Always rely on you to bring in the numbers.
You're the stats man. I just had to take your thunder before you jumped in and brought that up. Of course, you've sat through most of these 62 race starts.
Well, back at the front of the field, still less than a second between the top two. Frankie Chung still looks comfortable, certainly hasn't made any mistakes that we've noticed. The big thing, of course, was getting clear at the start and getting off the line, which he did so very, very well. But Alessio Picciarello now 0.7 of a second behind him, 7/10. So these are those two, and then just another second or so back to Gilbert and Rump, and 6 or 7 tenths between that. But that is Riquelme, and no doubt after the incident we saw where he went off, looks to have ended his race.
And also looks like the front bumper, the front splitter, has been pushed onto the wheel, so that may have knocked the car slightly out of alignment. And of course we saw that with Martin Rump yesterday. They basically destroyed his race. Alex Young, great to see him back on track. Of course, the Audi R8 LMS Cup this year is sharing a number of events alongside the new Blancpain GT Series Asia Championship, which is here in 2 weeks. And this particular car will be as part of that field. A number of these cars, in fact, Frankie Cheng will be in the field, so too Alessio Picciarello. So there is something to be gained by continuing on and using these cars on similar Pirelli tyres in 2 weeks' time in that championship. So they're not going to just park and walk away, oh, the race is over, I might finish last, I might be a lap down. It's valuable data because it's likely we will see Suzuka play a part in the Cup for years to come, and that is good news because it certainly is a circuit the drivers like to compete on.
Well, it's unlikely that Alex is going to get back up into the points at this point. He's currently running in 15th. Look at the push to passes down there. In 5th place behind him, just at the top of the screen, worth mentioning that Marchie Lee has just set the fastest lap of the race so far. Actually, as I say that, Sean Thong goes faster with a 2:03.7. So a lot of those, that middle pack of Marchie and Sean in 5th and 6th respectively, still fair way back on the leading 4. but who knows? If something happens that could close up that gap.
We've seen safety cars come up and eliminate leads in the past. Certainly the very first race of this year at Sepang, the same thing happened. A 5-second lead evaporated instantly because of an on-track incident further back in the field that forced Alessio Picariello to do the job all over again. So that is a very real possibility. So it's not over. You just have to keep pushing.
Well, Frankie, with 6 push-to passes left of his quota of 10, I think it looks like Alessio has the same.
They certainly had 7 and 7 last lap, and we saw them both on the front straight pushing feverishly. It was like the Christmas trees were lighting up. All of them were on push-to-pass, certainly the top 4 last time round. 7 left still there for Mitch Gilbert, and he, of course, has Martin Rump looming large in his rear vision mirrors.
And of course, there's no point bringing any of those push-to-passes back to the garage, but you have to pick your moments carefully to see when you want to use them. Perhaps save some in reserve just in case there is a safety start and then a restart when you get back up to speed. We saw Raquelme come, he thought misjudged it slightly at the end of yesterday's race. I thought he had one more lap to go and had some extra push-to-passes that he couldn't use.
Well, there's no sense bringing them back. You can't bank them in and add them to the quota for the next race meeting. It's all square again. So important. It's one of those things where you need to use the opportunity. But as you rightly say, what if there is a safety car? You've used them all to open up a huge gap or get away from a rival. Then you've got to do it all over again. Certainly off a safety car with the field bunched up. That would be the big opportunity to actually go on and race for a position. The lights are on again. No, in fact, yes, it was the front two. You've seen Marchi Lee's lights flashing. So too, Sean Thong. They are fighting further back in this field. And KOU is all over the back now of David Chen. Doing a good job, the South Korean driver. Just having a bit of a sneaky look on the run into turn 1. No real opportunity there. And of course, he needs to be very careful not to put his nose somewhere it's not wanted like he did yesterday during that big move at the chicane.
And his home track, of course, in Korea is the next stop of the Audi R8 LMS Cup season. So he'll be wanting to round it into form nicely. He always seems to do well there. The home drivers do that. Alex does very well in Malaysia. KO does particularly well in Korea as well. But just rounding out the top 6 or so at the moment, we've got Frankie Chung, then Alessio Picariello, Mitch Gilbert from Martin Rump, then a bit of a gap. 5 seconds now, down from close to 7 seconds with Marchi Lee and Sean Thong, David Chen, and then KOU.
David Chen and KOU currently on screen as they head under the tunnel. The loop under is, KO's pulling alongside. I'm not sure there's a passing move in there, but certainly he's sticking his nose in, making himself known. And again, he needs to be very careful to make sure that if he makes a move, it's a definitive move and there can be no question about contact. And that, again, is very, very difficult to achieve in Suzuka. Of course, keep in touch with everything that goes on with the Audi R8 LMS Cup online, www.audi-r8lmscup.com. And there, of course, you can link through to both Facebook and Instagram, where all the information, the photos, behind the scenes stories, videos, it's all available there and you can keep up to date with exactly what goes on. But certainly what's going on the circuit at the moment is those 2 Phoenix Racing Asia cars of Marchi Lee and Sean Thong, that's positions 5 and 6, continue to punch out some very, very quick laps. It was interesting talking to Alex Jung, who is part of that Phoenix Racing Asia operation earlier in the weekend. He said, well, we just haven't quite nailed the setup on this Pirelli DHC tyre. It's a little bit different to what we use in the Blancpain series, and we haven't quite got it to where we want to in the window. But what we've seen, certainly at Sepang, similar sort of scenario, the Phoenix Racing Asia team race very, very well. Marchi Lee's a prime one for saying, I don't qualify well, but I race very well. And he's proving it here again. And he's actually pulling away from Sean Thong, the 2 Audi Hong Kong drivers.
So, Sean, we got 2 big battles, as we've seen pretty much throughout this race, developing at the front, the 1 and the 2, and then the 3 and the 4. At what point does Alessio Picariello and at what point does Martin Rump, when do they make their moves to try and nudge ahead of the car that's just about half a second ahead of them?
Honestly, I don't think the driver of the 15 car on screen there, Alessio Picariello, will make a move. I don't think he's going to risk it. He's a smart young man. He's building a championship. He has a huge lead. Frankie hasn't had a good start to the season, so he's not in the fight with Picariello. Picariello is looking at Alex Jung, who's basically out of this race for championship points. He's looking at Mitch Gilbert, his next rival now in line. Mitch is behind him, but he has a big buffer in points over Gilbert. I think Rump's the one that may make a move. He's lining up where he can do it, what he can can do. But Gilbert, we see there 7 push-to-pass still in reserve. He might have enough to be able to pull away. And again, he is a very talented, young, rising star, much like Alessio Picariello and Martin Rump. So he's not going to be easily fooled into somebody coming past him that easily.
The other thing, of course, is that if Alessio does finish in second where he is at the moment, he takes 35 kilos into that next race in Korea where Frankie will take the 50. So that gives Alessio a little bit more chance for the win in round 5 in the season. Does that come into the thinking?
I think it certainly does come into the thinking. There is a little bit of a loss. It's a loss and benefit situation, and I think he would take that into consideration, certainly going back to South Korea, and of course a fairly famous circuit for that great rivalry last year between Alex Yoong and Alessio Picariello. We saw some big contact between those two at that event, so he'd be mindful that that is a circuit too where the weight can have a bit of a bearing. So you might be right. Let's just settle for second for points and also 15 kilos less in weight.
So this is the battle for position number 9 as we switch back to the leaders now. But there's Frankie Chung still with Alessio relentlessly pursuing him in second position. I don't think the lead has ever got to over a second. It's currently just about 8 tenths, but it's fluctuating between 5, 6 and 7th all the way through of this race.
There's a great shot of that sequence through the S's, turns 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you see all the cars lined up in different parts of the circuit. Martin Rump is doing what he can to try and line himself up a move on Mitch Gilbert, but I'm not sure that he's going to have the time to do it. We're 9 laps in, likely a 12-lap race distance. So we saw yesterday, we thought the race had come a little bit earlier. Usually we're seeing a 30-minute race, but it is dependent on the number of laps, whichever comes first. So distance-wise or time-wise, we got to 12 laps without a safety car intervention very, very quickly, and we're watching the clock thinking, oh, there's another 2 or 3 laps left. In fact, Stefan Riquelme was doing exactly the same thing and got caught with that extra push to pass, which in all reality probably couldn't have used to make a move on Gilbert into position number 2. But that's probably the biggest lead so far that we've seen from Frankie Chung. That's getting close to a second, but certainly there's nothing more than he needs to do than just keep out of reach as this battle continues to go on. Kane Jung getting very, very busy all over the tail there of Jeffrey Lee and the J-Fly Racing entry. Of course, for Audi Taiwan KCMG colours, very famous in the Asian region. Kane Jung making a guest appearance. And there is the 2012 Cup champion for Audi Hong Kong. And that, of course, is Marchie Lee, the veteran. We'll keep using the word. I think they've grown used to us calling them veterans now. Both he and Alex Yoong certainly frowned upon us last year when we'd used that word, but I think now Marchie's just given up.
They're still not happy about it.
It's a permanent frown on Marchie anyway.
And you can see the push to pass is the flashing red lights, meaning that they're going for that extra horsepower boost, and it kind of cancels each other out. They've still got plenty, as these two again, but Kane Jung looking to dive down the inside. A drag race as we've seen so many times. Jeffrey Lee moves over to cover though, and they stay in the same positions.
Well, these two have actually seen a fair bit of each other over the last few years in the GT Asia series, driving different cars. Of course, Jeffrey's been a very big part of the Absolute Racing operation and driving Audis for a very, very long time. So he knows what he's doing. He would much rather be fighting at the front of this field, but certainly we're talking veterans. He's had more starts in this championship than anyone apart from Marchie Lee. But he still has the passion and the fire to want to compete with these guys. So he'd be loving every bit of this battle with Kane Jung.
And it does seem a little bit that because they have double the number of push-to-passes that they had yesterday, they were perhaps still in yesterday's mindset with trying to save some in reserve. And now in the final laps of the races, they're using it almost every opportunity. A lot more flashing lights now that we're seeing that we saw at the start of the race, when perhaps it was more advised to use it when you're trying to create that distance.
Yeah, but again, it's a very narrow circuit. They'd call this an old school circuit. It was built in 1962, so it still has much of the aura of the original design. Very tight circuit, very small runoff, and very limited overtaking opportunities, unless you have a big performance advantage in some way, where it's braking, aerodynamics or outright speed, but of course all these cars are identical. That makes it more challenging. Push to pass is the one real opportunity to use, but you have to have a position to use it. No sense doing it in the middle of a corner where you're not going to be able to make maximum use of that additional 50 horsepower. But really it comes down to the start. That's why we saw so many cars with the lights flashing. It was like Christmas, coming on the run down to turn 1 off the start, because that's where you could make up some kind of advantage.
Well, it's going to take probably a mistake from Frankie Chung at this point to change the top 2 as he uses his push to pass. Alessio will just have one more left after the one he just used now. And Marchili, again in 5th position there at top of the screen, the gold car, trying to close that gap, but he's probably going to run out of time. But he's just 2 seconds now behind Martin Rump, whereas it was up to about 7 seconds earlier in the race.
It was quite a hefty gap between that group for first 4 and then back to the fight for 5th, with Riquelme at one point was leading. But since he's broken free of Riquelme and got away, Marchili has just been consistently amongst the fastest, if not the fastest driver on the circuit. You can never discount the 2012 Cup champion. He's done this a long time, but he's still very passionate about his motorsport. Now, of course, he's a team boss, and he's the co-team principal of Phoenix Racing Team, Phoenix Racing Asia team, with Ernst Moser, of course, who's the Phoenix Racing boss in Germany, a very, very experienced team owner, of course, racing in DTM and all the major events, including, of course, the Nürburgring 24-hour race.
So Frankie still with 3 push to passes, and the man behind him just the one with that 50 kilos in his car. So Frankie looking to be home and clear. Don't want to jinx him just yet. But he's had a very, very good race, hasn't he? We said the key was the start. He'd started very well, moved across, easy ahead into turn 1, and then slowly but surely, not the same way that Alessio comfortably built a lead yesterday, but he just easily has just piece by piece just built that very small lead, which is now up to 1.7 seconds.
Well, a victory only needs to be a victory by 100th of a second or 1,000th of a second, and we've seen races like that in the past where 3 cars have come to the line side by side. But he wants to get away. He doesn't want to be under that pressure, and I'm sure now Frankie Chen can take a breath and just relax a little bit, because he's opened up that 1.7 second lead. But certainly Marchili is absolutely storming, but there it is, it's over. 11 laps in, 12 laps is completed, and the victory is to Frankie Chung at the front of the field, and what a great celebration that will be for the Absolute Racing team, for whom he competes, and certainly for the Chinese driver. He will love being back on the top step of the podium. Of course, hasn't been on the top step of the podium despite all his seasons in the Cup a lot, but certainly he has figured in the championships results in the past, but this is his first win in 2 seasons, and what a way to make it back to the podium. A great result for him. Second, of course, Alessio Picciarello. So far we've had 4 rounds of the 2017 Audi R8 LMS Cup, 2 victories, 2 second place positions, and what a result that has been for Alessio Picciarello, who will extend his championship points lead. Of course, the big loser, and it's not a word we use lightly, but the one who has paid the biggest price perhaps for this second race at Suzuka is Alex Yoong. So Alex Yoong is classified 14th in this race, 3 laps down. He had that long crawl back to the pits with a deflating rear tyre after that contact very early in the race at the S's off the start. And unfortunately for Alex Yoong, that will have a big impact on his current championship position. But we're only 4 races into a 10-round season. So, of course, there he is, Alex Yoong. There is another 6 rounds from which he can recover. And we've seen this in the past. He had bad luck at the first round of the championship in his home circuit in Sepang as he takes the checkered flag to complete the 4th race of the season. And he came back and he won the second race convincingly at Sepang. That put him back into the championship points race, of course, with the man he battled last year from mid-season to the close of the championship to win by just a solitary point over Alessio Picciarello. But no denying the winner of this race, and he'll be a very, very happy man, Frankie Chung, and deservedly so. He did everything he needed to do. Sean Thong alongside, just congratulating the man he drove alongside in the 2015 and 2016 runnings of the Nürburgring 24-hour race. The Asian team not there in its full form this year, as Alex Yoong was over there just a week ago, campaigning a GT4 Audi R8, which we'll see more of those in future. Now, Frankie's just driven off the circuit there, perhaps just celebrating, and so too has Mitch Gilbert. In my mind, I think I understand what they're trying to achieve there. It's an old tactic from go-kart days. Certainly, it doesn't do the weight of the car any harm to have a few additional rocks in the under tray. But of course, these cars are all scrutineered and weighed prior to these races. They'll be running just enough fuel to make sure that they can complete the race. Why fill a tank completely to the top if you're not going to use all that extra fuel? You want to minimise your weight above the absolute minimum. But there is no denying the winner of this race. There he is, Frankie Chung. He'll be a very, very happy Chinese driver for Absolute Racing. A nice result for the FAW-VW Audi Racing Team driver, and congratulated by the new director and the outgoing director of Audi Sport Customer Racing Asia. And of course, here's Martin Kuhl and Bern Gers. There's Ingo Mader, the team boss of the Absolute Racing Team, co-team principal with Fabien Fior. Fabien's not here. He'll be watching this and be very, very happy he's driver. And of course, the team are having a great time of this celebration. So 2 victories here, back-to-back for the Absolute Racing Team. First for Alessio Piccarello in round 3 yesterday, and victory for Frankie Chung in this flash new black and gold helmet. Taking the win for Absolute, and a good haul of points. Good haul too for the man who placed second, Alessio Piccarello, and Mitch Gilbert in position number 3. Looking at the order, Martin Rump in position number 4. Marchi Lee, great drive, fastest driver on the circuit over the closing laps, position 5. The driver who set the fastest lap of the race, Sean Thong, in position number 6 for the Audi Tita Racing Team. David Chen, great drive for the Tianxia Racing driver on his debut here. He takes the win in the AM Plus division over Jeffrey Lee, and third in that classification was Kane Jiang. Pirit Bhirombhakdi takes back-to-back victories for the AM division. He finishes in 11th place, just ahead of his rivals Rick Yoon and Sun Jing Zhu. So a nice result there. Can't state that enough. He had such a tough season last year. He couldn't even eke out a podium position in the end, Frankie Chung, but victory here again for the Chinese driver. So let's take a look back at the highlights of this race. Big group of people on the grid before the start of the race. Always popular motorsport in Japan. Off the standing start, Frankie Cheng just moved straight across on Mitch Gilbert. A little bit of wheel spin for the Malaysian driver on left of screen. And then it was Alessio Piccarello, a monster start for him off the second row to force his Absolute Racing teammate Mitch Gilbert across and take that second position away. Then this was the strange one. Slightly caught out of position. May have even been contact perhaps from Raquelme in the Castrol Racing Team entry, and of course Raquelme would get into trouble a little bit later on, but certainly that was it for the reigning champion, the number 1 car. The other car involved in that incident too, trying to avoid what was going on, was Anthony Liu. Now here's the battle for the position with Raquelme, and that is a move down at the chicane between Marchi Lee, Raquelme in the 11 car, and that is David Chen taking advantage, but so too Sean Thong was able to get past David Chen in the Tianxia Racing car and follow his teammate through to position number 5. But at the front, the battle continued. It was nice and tight for a while between Frankie Chung and Alessio Piccarello. Mitch Gilbert likewise had Martin Rump close behind, and there it was, quite a big gap back to Marchi Lee. Unfortunately for Raquelme, damage to the right front of the car, and he was forced to step out of the car and unfortunately would not return to the podium as he did yesterday. Good battle too between Jeffrey Lee and Kane Jiang over position for the AM Plus division. In the end, Jeffrey Lee would take that position, but no denying the winner, and that of course Frankie Cheng in the number 31 FAW-VW Audi R8 LMS GT3, crossing the line to take the checkered flag ahead of Alessio Piccarello, the championship points leader, who extends that lead. And look how much ground the 2 Phoenix Racing Asia cars made up. And that was a good result too for both Marchie Lee and Sean Tong here during the historic first event for the Audi R8 LMS Cup at Suzuka. We're off to the podium to follow the leaders.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to Audi R8 Cup 2017 Black Forest Suzuka Circuit. Now, here comes the awarding ceremony of the Audi R8 Cup 2017 Black Forest in category overall. I'm very honored to announce that the third place in category overall is Mr. Mitch Gilbert from Team Audi Racing. Welcome. Congratulations to Mitch. Now here comes the first place in category overall, Mr. Frankie Chung, from Team FAWB.
And here is the winner, Frankie Chung. Frankie Chung will be getting ready.
Now may I invite awarding the prize to the winner of category overall, may I invite Ms. Suzuka Global Store Marketing Manager of the Audi Asia Pacific. Please. Thank you. And now please present the prize. Thank you. Now please present the prize in third place. Thank you. And Mr. Nepali, may I invite you back to the podium and take the first photo of our winners. Congratulations to all the winners. Thank you for the wonderful performance. Now here comes the champagne time.
Well, Sean, it's been a long time coming, that next win for Frankie Chung here in the Cup. He's had some in the past, of course, but with Alex's dominance and then the rise of Alessio and Martin Rump and some of the other youngsters, hasn't had a win for a while, but he got one today, and it was pretty much a textbook race.
It was, and he'll savour that because certainly he needed to have a championship win at some point, or a race win, and this will bring him right back into contention for this year, and that's perfect. As you say, a lot of competition now. It certainly continues to improve in the Cup, and Frankie's got a big job ahead of him, but certainly everyone has, because Alessio finished second. More championship points increases the margin again.
That's right, and worth mentioning just how impressive that drive was from Alessio in second, with the 50 kilograms of success ballast, because he won yesterday's opening race of the weekend. So, and he never let Frankie get out of his sight until perhaps the last lap or two, where he just opened up a little bit of a gap.
Oh, he certainly did, and Martin Rump was another one. He was all over the rear of Mitch Gilbert, but the three young drivers there. But as you rightly say, we have a veteran in the midst, and that, of course, is Frankie Chung. He is back at the top of the list, and it was pretty much textbook.
So this is the AM Plus podium with, on the right-hand side of your screen, Kane Jiang, Jeffrey Lee on the left-hand side there, and this, the winner in the AM Plus class, David Chen, a 7th place finish overall, and what a drive for him.
That was a very impressive drive, and of course the Tianxia Racing team, their debut in the Cup too, so they will take this away and celebrate for the Chinese team. This was a very, very nice result.
So Jeffrey in 9th position, Kane in 10th overall, just behind KOU, who had a pretty exciting race with some moments, as we often see from him.
Yeah, well, he kept his nose clean today. Unfortunately, got penalised for trying to make a big passing move yesterday. Didn't quite come off. He tried to avoid contact, had nowhere to go, and unfortunately paid the price at the end of that with a 30-second post-race penalty. That dropped him down a few positions. Great to see Jim Ye from China GT there, from Golden Port Circuit, of course, in Beijing, on right of screen, presenting the trophy. Nice to see him come across to Suzuka for this event. Of course, he and his team are big supporters of Audi and the Audi program. but a nice result for David Chen. Be very happy with that, and good too for Kane Jiang on right of screen to be on the podium alongside the veteran Jeffrey Lee. I'm not going for the champagne just yet. Jeffrey's doing a bit of negotiation as to who is going to be into that one first, but a nice result for him too.
Just checking the time. It is still before lunch, but these guys have done their job for the day. And we've got one more podium before we can speak to the winners from the race. I will just ask you about Martin Rump, who finished 4th overall. Perhaps disappointment for him. He pushed really hard and he had a disappointing race yesterday. Started in 4th, would have been desperate to get into the podium to sort of cap off that weekend, but not to be.
Well, it highlights what we've been talking about for much of this weekend. Very difficult to overtake here at this circuit, and that was something that certainly Frankie Cheng used to his advantage because it was harder for his rivals to get past him. We saw that freight train, but that made the moves, I think, too, of Marchi Lee and Sean Thong even more impressive because they were able to move up the field.
Yeah, well, here we're just about to see the podium from the AM class, the third of our 3 classes. There is Sun Jing Zhu in 3rd position. He will be joined in 2nd position in the AM class by Rick Yoon. And Sean, I'll let you do the pronunciation honours on the winner of the AM class today.
Biren Bhakti. He's gone back-to-back. Of course, the Thai driver, another one who doesn't have a lot of experience within the Cup. He was able to take another win for the Singer Plan B Motorsport team and a good result too for him with the Cup.
So they'll just be posing for a few photos, and we'll be joined in a moment by Mitch Gilbert, who came 3rd in the race overall.
And of course, Sean Thong, fastest lap of the race there on the podium with Sun Jing Zhu. So very impressive performance by all these guys, and nice to see the full podium of the AM division and of course the AM Plus division. See those drivers awarded for their efforts, and certainly they had some good racing a little bit further back in the field. But certainly the racing at the front of the field was where much of the focus was, and of course that is for outright and for championship, and that we have seen quite a bit this weekend.
Well, we're just about to be joined by Mitch Gilbert here. And Mitch, well, you know, thanks for joining us here. And you don't look the happiest we've seen you throughout the weekend. Of course, you lost that 2nd place at the start, but you managed to hold off Martin through pretty strong challenges throughout the race. So sort of some positives and some negatives there.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm definitely not disappointed, but, you know, at the same time, it's kind of the same thing as yesterday, you know. Alessio beat me with 50 kilos and I had 35, and, you know, he kind of drove away from me a bit. I was definitely stronger than I was yesterday. I kind of managed to keep with them for a bit longer, but I can't seem to hang on in the race that well. I think in quali, I'm there, I can match him, but in the race, not so much. So, yeah, I mean, Martin was coming at me, he had no weight, and I know he wanted to, I'm sure he wanted to finish his weekend with a podium. So I was quite stressed trying to keep him behind, and you know, a few moments I thought he was a bit close, but in the end I felt I had quite the measure of him.
Do you think it was the start? Maybe you could have been a little bit more aggressive to hold Alessio. Do you think maybe yesterday you were talking about how you couldn't really see and that chance of potential contact? Do you think if you'd made a more definitive move, maybe you'd been able to keep him out?
To be honest, we had a conversation before again, and he was just telling me that he didn't see me. So yesterday I didn't see him, today he didn't see me. I think he came across quite aggressive. He did leave a bit of room, but it was quite aggressive. And I think just coming off 2nd, it was quite slippery, and he had a way better jump, so I couldn't really do that much. I was behind already into turn 1. If I was a bit more alongside, I would have definitely had a go. But yeah, I mean, fair play to him. He did leave me a bit of space.
Mitch, you talked about the weight that you both had in the car. Just from a driver's perspective, what practical differences does that make to you guys in the car?
To be honest, I try not to think about it that much because it's not like it's, you know, 50, I think maybe you start to think about it, but even that you could probably get away with. You just start to feel a little bit less grip everywhere, so a little bit less on the braking, a little bit less in the middle of the corner, and then your tyre gets a bit hotter, and then it's just harder throughout the whole race.
Good stuff. Thanks very much, Mitch.
Cool. Thanks.
There you go. I mean, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Taking all these things into consideration as you compete in this championship. I mean, it's things like push to pass. There's the weight penalty that you have because of your success being on the podium. So it does make it very interesting.
Well, Alessio Picariello waiting in the wings. Alessio, just ask you to join us over here at the panel. Initial thoughts on the race from your point of view?
Well, I'm pretty happy with second place, as I was starting third and I had 50 kilos on board. So yeah, I knew the start would be key, and I really focused to have the best start as I could. I actually had a better one than the both guys in front of me, and yeah, I could take a second position before the first corner, and then I tried to put pressure on Frankie, but I knew from the beginning on it would be difficult, because first it's difficult to pass here, and second with 50 kilos it's harder for me at the end of the race. And yeah, he was just way too fast out of the corner, out of the slow corners and down the straights. I could really feel the weight. I had no chance to try anything on braking, so P2 I think was the maximum today.
You were talking yesterday about this circuit being so narrow that the real advantage was off the start, wasn't it? You had to make that move. You're listening to Mitch say you were aggressive, but you kind of had to be.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was more focused on Frankie because, I mean, my goal was to be on the first position. I thought I could have a go, but he had a bit of wheel spin, and then suddenly he matched the speed. So I couldn't see Mitch anymore because I think he was on my dead angle. I could see Martin, and so I went on the inside, and then suddenly I saw Mitch, so I tried to leave him a bit of room, because of course he's my teammate and I don't want to crush him. So, but yeah, luckily we get through without any contacts, and we could stay like that.
And then just talk about your strategy as the race developed. You trying to bank the points, knowing that you have the weight in the car and that it's pretty difficult to overtake on this circuit, or are you just trying to keep as close as you can, perhaps pressure Frankie into making a mistake?
No, definitely my goal was to win. I mean, still early in the championship, so if I can win, I will go for it. I tried to put pressure on him, but he was he was really strong all weekend, so he didn't do any mistake during the race. So I tried, but again, I knew it would be hard to pass. So my only chance was to put him under pressure, and he didn't make any big mistakes. So that's how it was.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Alessio.
Thanks, Alessio.
Well, Frankie's just... sorry, I was going to just bring Frankie straight in.
Why not?
Frankie, did you feel the pressure from Alessio?
Yes, definitely. And to be honest, I got an okay start, and I'm just surprised that Alessio got an even better one. And yeah, so really tried to keep it clean, especially into the first corner. And from there onwards, I just really tried to keep the let's say healthy gap to Alessio and focusing on myself. I wasn't really going for this push to pass for a single lap, and I was more concerning about to save some of it for later on the race in case if there's a safety car. Yeah.
What does this mean to you? I mean, that was all very, very nice, but I mean, for you, after being in championship contention 2 seasons ago, very lacklustre year by your standards last year, you're on the top step of the podium. That'd have to be pretty impressive.
Well, I think with the new generation of our LMS Cup, and the car has much more downforce, and it definitely giving the driver more confidence to attack, and it suits my style a little bit more. And also from this year, I managed to gathering all the experience from last year and trying to make this step forward, and also giving myself a little bit more self-belief and to be able to fight against those, let's say, the well-performed driver.
So, Frankie, where do you go from here? Alessio still has a pretty big lead in the championship standings, but it is still early in the season. How can you maintain this form through Korea and onwards?
To be honest, coming to Suzuka, I feel fairly confident that I can do a good job. And but because it has been a long time that I'm not standing on the top of the podium, so to qualify on pole position and also to be in the both practice session was managed to be the P1. I was a little bit surprised, and sitting in the car before the red light goes off, I was long time that I see no cars in front of me, and which was a really nice feelings. And the championship, we still have 3 race weekend, and Alessio, I must say, and I think he's in a half step ahead of the rest of us, and especially considering that he has a consistently perform really well, and also manage, especially I think one of his really strong strengths is with the weight, and managed to do in the race distance, he still managed to do a very competitive time. This I'm very lucky that I have him as a teammate, and I can see his data, and together with Mitch, and the three of us after racing, and I think we are all working together and trying to learn from each other where is the stronger point.
Do you put yourself under more pressure now that you've got yourself back to the top step of the podium? You need to keep this momentum going and carry on this year, or do you just not think about it and take each weekend as it comes?
For sure that I take it as a separate race weekend, but what I think is very critical for me to win this race, it's a self-belief. And I was kind of a bit lost last year, and didn't really know where I should be, and where the car direction going to be. And now having that winning the race, I know the qualify was the most important part. But I think the more self-belief and trying to repeat it again in Korea.
Thanks very much, Frankie. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well done. That was fantastic, really. I mean, and as he says, self-belief, that's what a lot of this is certainly about. And when we go back through the highlights, you'll see that he was just confident, he did what he needed to do, got off the start nicely, and just led this field away. And then from there, he was the one that had it to lose.
And it shows you how much of the mental side comes into, not just motorsport, but any sport. But, he talked about how, actually admitted that he was lost, felt lost in the car last year, didn't know where he was going. And here he is, winning the race and dominant, really, from being fastest throughout the weekend. Pole position in qualifying, led from the start and dominated the race. And that's such a turnaround. But we can take a look at the highlights of the race to see how Frankie won from start to finish.
Yeah, nice crowd on the grid before the start of the race. The Japanese are very happy to see motorsport at this level come to Japan. And a great start there by Frankie, but he admitted that he thought Alessio got a better start. He's looking at his rear vision mirror, and suddenly Alessio's in P2. So that's very good for him. Caught Mitch Gilbert out. Alex Jung up to position 4 and in a good position to 5, but then this all happened down at turns 3 and 4, and that created a bottleneck for some of the drivers further back in the field. Contact then that eliminated both Alex Jung and Anthony Liu. That was game over for them, unfortunately, when in the real sense of the word, because Alex Jung did carry on. Anthony Liu, sadly, too much damage to the left front of that car, had to retire. But then the race went on further back down the field for the AM and the AM Plus divisions. But this was a good overtaking move too by Marchili. Very difficult to make a move here at Suzuka without some level of contact. And he snuck through and continued to move up the field. So too did his teammate Sean Thong, who's applying pressure there to David Chen, who did a brilliant job with the Tianxia Racing car. Nice to see them two competing for the first time in the Cup at Suzuka for the very first event here at the Suzuka circuit. So Marchi Lee continuing to move forward. Unfortunately, Stefan Rakelmi was forced into pit lane and retirement. Damage to the right front of his car, and no more podium finish for the driver from Monaco. And a good battle towards the closing stages of the race too for Jeffrey Lee and Kane Jung, as they were battling for the top spot of the AM Plus division. Of course, David Chen was in that fight too. He was a little bit further forward in the field, and certainly at the front of this field outright was great to see Frankie Chen back in the championship and back on top step of the podium.
Well, Sean, if there's one person or one group of people who are happier than Frankie Cheng, it's the Absolute Racing team with that podium, the top three. And we talked about it yesterday, how in the past years of the Cup, the data was shared amongst all the drivers, but now it's the teammates. So when you've got Frankie and Mitch and Alessio all seeing each other's data, but the other drivers can't see that, it's a massive, massive advantage and a disadvantage for the other teammates.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things too that you've got to consider with the Absolute Racing team. They are very, very experienced in the Cup. They've been here since year one, day one, race one, and they can use all that knowledge to set the cars up, share the data between those leading drivers, and that only helps make you better, and that makes it harder for the drivers that you're battling against.
And from a competitive, objective point of view, obviously we want all the teams to be competitive within the Cup, but it is now going to be increasingly hard to see people catch those three if they're working together and pushing each other in that sense, and the others just don't have that.
Oh, certainly, it's going to be a very interesting way for this season to run out.
Well, thank you very much, Sean. As always, it's been fantastic bringing you live coverage here from Suzuka, Japan. We'll be back next time in Korea, but in the meantime, do stay tuned for the press conference.